1.
Hi, welcome to our show today, Community Wellness with Pat Simpson. We are having a very special show today. We have a very special guest, Mayor Dan Rizzo, the Mayor of Revere. Thank you, Mayor Rizzo, for coming.
It's my pleasure, Pat.
Thank you. You're always out and about, busy helping people in Revere. Today we wanted to focus on winter safety for the community, and kind of a little bit of a thought about seniors and what are the special needs that we have for seniors for winter safety. Because as we know, every season there's different ways that we can be prepared for different events. As the tornado, which, can we speak about that for a minute? Because I want to thank you of all the work that you did for the residents and for all of us during that time. You were there, you brought in the resources, you had the meetings, you were just amazing. And can you just talk a little bit about how that was such a surprise to have, number one, a tornado in Revere, but then how you dealt with it and how it was for you and how did you think it went?
Well, I mean, obviously it was a huge surprise to have such a devastating storm like that hit our community in a period of 4 minutes. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. You know, we had a storm, a tornado that was 3/8 of a mile wide, go through the heart of our city, right down our central business district, right down Broadway, travel 2 miles and then dissipate. It was incredible. Wow. And but, you know, obviously it caused millions and millions of dollars worth of damage. It displaced, you know, over a dozen families. There were another 60 or 70 homes that were categorized as having suffered serious damage. So we had a lot to deal with, and I really give an awful lot of credit to our first responders, our emergency management team, our public works department. I mean, everybody really rallied and work together, which was really the key. I think it's the key in any major event like that, any major catastrophic event, that if you can get people to work together, yes. As opposed to sometimes people can be very territorial. Yes. This was an effort that everybody worked together, and I don't think that the residents' participation in this should be lost in all in this conversation, yes. Because the residents, in spite, many of them who, you know, either suffered damage to their homes or had significant damage in their neighborhoods, were left without power, were left without cable. You know, a lot of major inconvenience and a lot of, you know, damage that people had to sustain, but yet they stayed resolute, they helped one another, yeah. And it made my job as mayor of the city that much easier. So, you know, it was really, you know, I mean, it took us really until the National Weather Service informed us that we were hit with an EF2 tornado. It never crossed our minds, even when we were first meeting in my office, you know, 25, 30 minutes after the storm hit. We still couldn't get our head around what actually happened, because right. We're not used to a tornado. Right. I thought maybe just these high winds, a series of microbursts or macrobursts. We just really couldn't put it all together. And we saw a team of 4 or 5 people from the National Weather Service come into my office, go out of my office, and 15 minutes later came back in my office to let us know that it was quickly determined that we had in fact been hit with a tornado. So, but we're still going through it, and a lot of people are still feeling the impacts of that July 28th storm. So, you know, we're still doing our best to try to get cleaned up, yeah.
And how are they doing? I know at your town hall meeting there, it was wonderful. You had insurance people, you had the public safety people, you had Red Cross. You also had mental health people. And I think that's so important to remember in any disaster, that there's always the after effects, that if people feel like they need somebody to talk to or to some support, that it's always there for them, and it could affect people in different ways. And I know I was so grateful that you incorporated that into your action plan for the community afterwards, because I think that's so important.
Oh, absolutely. You know, again, it was such a traumatic event for a lot of people that you know, we knew and recognized the importance of having counselors and public health professionals there to help people process this. I mean, you know, again, there was a wide range of people that were impacted. There were some that just had a series of, you know, downed trees in their yards, to people that actually had to vacate their homes because they were no longer deemed habitable. So you know, we really wanted to provide all the services that we possibly could, because, you know, let's face it, within a 4-minute time span, you're going from cleaning up in your kitchen to having to find a place to live.
Right.
That's a lot for any human being to
Yes.
process. And you know, so, but again, I'm grateful for the terrific participation, even, you know, and I'm really happy that you mentioned that, Pat, from really every organization.
Right.
That, you know, Mass General obviously was, you know, was there, and North Suffolk Mental Health was a participant, and we really, you know, it was a cross section of businesses and people that really helped make this event a lot more tolerable than maybe it otherwise would have been. Yeah.
How is the Revere, the Tornado Relief Fund going? I know you've raised some funds for the residents, and thank you for that.
Yeah, you know, that's something that we took on our own. We thought that, you know, we knew early on that because of the nature of the storm and because of the city's location, a lot of people were going to be hit hard financially, in addition to emotionally and otherwise. They were going to be hit very hard financially. Even though most people had private insurance that would cover a loss for a tornado, some people had exceptionally high deductibles because of the nature of the storm. Other people had policies that limited coverage, let's say, for example, for cleanup of trees and other debris. So, you know, we thought it was important to at least do what we could to try to raise money. We just had our last fundraiser. We've kind of dragged it on longer than what I had hoped, but we did so only to raise as much money as we possibly could, because we want to give as much money as we can to the victims. And so we just had our last fundraiser this past Saturday night, and now our great team of you know, led by Jerry Leone, who's the executive director of the fund, and our very giving and talented board of directors, are going to go through these applications, finalize them, put a dollar amount. It seems like at this point probably everyone will get an equal award, because we weren't able to meet everybody's needs. So we're going to try to make it as fair as possible. Give everybody a check just before Christmas.
Nice.
And hopefully it'll take some of the sting off. As much as we would have liked to have met all the needs, I don't think we're going to get there, but there'll be something for everybody that submitted an application in a timely manner.
Thank you. That is, thank you from the residents of Revere. That's wonderful. Thanks, thanks, thanks. So let's talk about winter safety. So for me, I as an emergency preparedness coordinator for the 3 health centers, so I'm the coordinator in Chelsea, Charlestown, and Revere. I think about the 3 communities, about the health centers themselves being prepared for winter emergencies. But I do think a lot about the community and how we can prepare the community. And I especially think about all vulnerable populations, such as our seniors and our children and people with disabilities. So what are some of the ways that we can share with our audience, some ways that people can be prepared for winter emergencies? For example, we have the emergency alert notification system, which I love that you've installed that, called Code Red.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, Code Red allows us, and I guess the one liability in the Code Red system is that you need to sign up for it.
Right.
And so for anybody that isn't already signed up to Code Red, what Code Red does is it allows us to if there's an emergency event, like, you know, let's say an impending snowstorm that might be serious in nature, or this tornado that we just talked about, we can make a phone call, and it will go out to everybody who's signed up to Code Red. It will go to your house phone, it will go to your cell phone, it will go to your email, it will go to a text message. You can sign up a number of different ways in order to receive messages that we would consider an emergency. And oftentimes we use Code Red, in all honesty, to talk about community events too.
Right, I love that.
So we try, you know, it's really an information tool that we use to communicate with our residents, but you need to sign up for it. So people that are not signed up for it, they can go to revere.org,
Yes.
which is the city's website.
Yep.
Or you can certainly, if you don't have access to a website, you can call City Hall, and the number to my office is 781-286-8111.
Excellent.
And we can help you get signed up to Code Red.
Perfect.
You know, we find it to be a very valuable tool, and we believe that our residents think it's a valuable tool as well.
It is, and I live here in Revere, and I get the Code Reds, and I'm always so grateful. It's a great tool.
It's great.
Now, if a senior doesn't have a computer, they could call City Hall, or they could ask a neighbor or one of their family members also to help them to sign up for Code Red. So there's many ways to sign up for Code Red.
Absolutely.
So, can you tell me a little bit about the Snow Angels?
So Snow Angels, you know, when I took over as mayor back about 3 years ago, I knew there was a lot of seniors and people with disabilities that found it hard, particularly during significant snowstorms, to get themselves shoveled out, that didn't have anybody else, didn't have maybe any children or grandchildren that could come over and assist them. Didn't have the wherewithal financially to get some sort of a snow removal service in. So we have partnered with Revere High School, and in particular, the JROTC kids.
Excellent.
Who are absolutely tremendous. And they carry out what they call their mission with like military precision.
Wow.
I mean, they're dispersed across the city, and what it is essentially seniors and people with disabilities that don't have any other options available to them can sign up to be the recipient of this service by the Snow Angels.
Wow.
And they go out in groups of 2s and 3s and shovel out these homes. You know, it's free of charge. They do it, they earn community service hours, the kids do. They earn community service hours by doing it. I mean, like as I said earlier, it's not limited to JROTC. Right now, they're the only ones who have taken us up on the city's offer to participate in this, but we'd love other kids that may want to earn community service hours to get involved and help out if they can. But you know, we found it, again, another valuable service. I should say that the demand, we don't have enough kids to meet the demand. So, you know, we're really taking these applications very seriously, looking at them, and, you know, trying to make sure that with what limited resources we have are given to people that are most in need. So, you know, again, those people that don't have maybe other people in their lives that can help them out and come over and shovel them out or something like that, you know.
Wow,
so.
that's a wonderful program. That's a great program, and I hope we can get more students this year to sign up.
Yeah, me
That
too.
would be great.
Me too, absolutely. But as I say, the kids that do help out, it's really, you know, it's really heartwarming for me to go around the city and see these kids out there shoveling out.
Oh, it's beautiful.
You know, these seniors. And last year, and we're going to continue with this tradition, at the end of the year, we have the kids and the people whom are the recipients of the service get together, and I throw a little pizza party for them.
Nice.
And I give the kids a certificate acknowledging their hard work. And
Wonderful.
it's really nice to see that dynamic, so
Yeah,
it's
that's
great. Yeah.
So what people can do if they have anybody in their family, any seniors or any people that need help, they could look in their family to see if somebody could help them. They might have a grandchild or a son or a daughter or a neighbor. So that's what I wanted to talk about the importance of letting their neighbors know if they need help for the winter to help prepare them. Because if there is a storm and people can't get out, to let people know that they might need help, they may need assistance. So I think it's so important as good neighbors to communicate with each other beforehand so that the senior will be taken care of during a storm, or if they had to stay in shelter in place if there was an emergency, or if they had to evacuate, that they would have the correct supplies if they had to evacuate.
Right.
Such as having their medication handy, having their important papers, their health insurance documents. If they have a pet, to think beforehand, what are you going to do with your pet? Because sometimes shelters will not take a pet, but you can arrange something else with a family member or a neighbor to help take care of that pet. Right. So there are ways beforehand, right, to think about winter emergencies.
Oh, sure. I mean, you know, one of the things that that we always say, particularly if we send out, let's say, a code red during one of these major storms. It could be, I mean, you know, sometimes we go through a real extended period of cold weather or something like that. You know, and this is something that is almost, and I consider myself very fortunate being mayor of a city that has people that it's almost instinctive for them to look out for each other.
Yes.
But I don't think I can say it enough that if you have an elderly neighbor, you know, again, somebody that may be disabled and can't get around the way that maybe you or I could,
Right.
that we keep an eye out for them. You know, look
Yes.
to your left and right, and just kind of make sure they're okay. You know, if you go, you know, make sure that they have heat.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you know, there's people out there that need fuel assistance. That's available through CAPIC.
Yes.
You know, Mass Save is another program that's available to people that, you know, through National Grid that that they may not know that they may be entitled to, that can help them keep their homes warmer and things like that. So, but again, I think a lot of it comes down to looking out, you know, for our most vulnerable population, and you know, we're very lucky to have neighborhoods, you know, like we do, that, like I say, it's instinctive for them, and
Yes.
it makes our job and it makes our job for our public safety professionals that much easier, because when they inform us, then we can provide the assistance that they need.
Excellent, absolutely. So with the holidays coming, there'll be lots of activities going on. People will be coming out and joining us. I know, I see you have Thanksgiving dinners in your newsletter and
Yes.
Santa events.
Yep.
But what can people do at home to prepare for the holidays to keep their homes safe? What are some things they can do?
Well, I mean, again, you always, you know, this time of year you've got to be very careful with candles.
Right.
You know,
So it's better to have a flashlight with batteries than a candle. A candle's fine,
Yeah.
but you should never leave it unattended, because that's where one of the #1 reasons we have fires, because of candles.
absolutely.
But also, I was reading yesterday that there's the other #1 reason, the #2 reason for fires is people put their stoves on for heat.
Yeah.
And then towels get on fire or toxic gases are released. So if people need fuel assistance, to explore ways to get the fuel and not to be using their stove as a heating source, because pets will go in there, then it could hurt pets and children, and toxic gases, many reasons why it's not a good idea to have a stove as a heating element.
Absolutely not. I mean, there's, you know, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Pat. That's a very, very dangerous avenue to go down. I mean,
Yes.
if you reach a point where you have to use your stove for heat, you should be calling City Hall
Right.
and see what we can do to help.
Yes.
You know, in my opinion, everybody should have a carbon monoxide detector in their
Yes.
house.
Right. A working one.
A working one, exactly. So, you know, those are obviously very, very important factors when it comes to winter safety. You know, you talked earlier about making sure that people have an adequate supply of medication. You know,
Right.
there could be times, particularly during heavy storms, when people are asked to shelter in place, they can't get to a pharmacy.
Right.
Make sure that they don't go down to their last dose of medication.
Right.
Have an adequate and ample supply ready for them. You know, and you know, a lot of things when it comes to winter safety, you know, come down to just, you know, preparation, and I know that's where you come in.
Yeah.
I
know, I can't, I'm always talking about it, because
you're a
it's so
consummate
important.
professional when it comes to emergency preparedness, and you know, I mean, I'm sure, you know, as much information as maybe I could share, you could triple or quadruple that. So,
Well, no, you know your stuff, but it's good to remind people, and I do talk about it quite frequently. I try to bring it up at different events and different forums, because I think you can't necessarily prepare everything in one day, but if you always can kind of chop away at it, get some things prepared. For example, to have a first aid kit, you know, it's good to have if you get one. I have one of these crank radios, so that if
sure.
there was an emergency, that I'd be able to get the information. If there's no electricity, if there was a power outage, which people should think about. If we don't have power, you should have a flashlight. If you have candles, be careful. But
Right.
also have a radio with batteries or a crank radio, so you could get information in an emergency if you needed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too, and it's becoming more and more prevalent, and again, it might not apply as much to you know, people that don't have a cell phone or something like that, but you know, we've been using Facebook and Twitter, which
Yes.
are two you know, very popular programs
Yes.
now, to communicate with people, particularly during emergencies. And we did a lot of that, as you may know, during
Yes.
the tornado. I remember when I first became mayor, the mayor of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, that suffered that devastating tornado back
Yes.
several years ago, a 2-mile wide tornado that wiped out half of his town. He said because of this, you know, power outages and phone outages, the only way he could communicate with his residents was through Facebook and Twitter. And
Excellent.
so those are very, very important programs to be able to stay in touch and
Yes.
to communicate with City Hall and with public safety officials in the event that they ever needed it.
Right.
You know, you know, it is, I know it's a changing world and there's a lot of people out there that
Yeah.
find it very hard to adapt.
It's hard to keep up for some of these seniors, but
Yeah, but it's worth
so
it's worth
important.
looking into. I mean, I know, like my mother and father-in-law, they're on their iPad using FaceTime, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
you know, so it's you know, and they're in their mid-80s. So I think if they can learn it, I think almost anybody can you know, can learn it if they just assert themselves and they
Right,
you know.
and they don't have to know how to do every fancy thing.
No.
If they can just log in and then be able to access these informational portals.
I think what
It's so
happens
important.
with a lot of people, and it's not necessarily just seniors, it could be people that, you know, my age, that
Right.
aren't used to using a computer. You know, you don't need to be a computer engineer.
Right.
You know, things have become much more simplified these days. So if you just, again, if you put a little bit of time in just to learn, you'd be amazed how much that you can find out. And when it comes to emergency preparedness, you can be locked in and tuned in to things going on so that you don't feel like you're isolated.
Right.
And, you know, but again, you know, there are people that are just going to take the traditional routes. Like, for example, if people have a problem during the snow season and you know, and they feel like they're either not getting as much attention as they should be getting with a snowstorm or something like that, they can always call our Public Works Department. They're there, and generally
Excellent.
during the snowstorms, you know, they're there 24 hours at a time. So, you know, and that number is 781-286-8149. And people
Excellent.
can call that number and, you know, they'll get onto a list of people that need to be responded to.
Perfect.
And, you know, so we try to do everything that we can to keep people informed and to give them options to inform us. And we try to be, obviously, as responsive as we can be on a priority basis, you know. I mean,
Right.
sometimes people get frustrated because, you know, that, you know, a situation that they might think is critical,
Right.
but in the meantime, we're dealing with another situation, maybe with a major water break in front of
Right.
someone's house where things are all icing up, and
Right.
we're
So
trying
you have to prioritize.
yeah, so you know, and there's only so many employees and responders that we can
Tap.
you know, that we can tap. Exactly. So
right.
you know,
So that's why I think personal preparedness is so key here. So I love the idea of learning about all the resources that the city has. The government has the ready.gov. There's a lot of information there for seniors and for everybody. And then on the Revere website also. Red Cross has a lot of information. There's so many resources out there. But people need to take the first step and think about their personal situation. So how can they be ready? How can they be prepared? So I think people, if they can start thinking now that if there was a storm and they had to stay in their home for 3 days, how would they do that? Could they do that? So, and how can you do that? And the simple things are to have extra water, which is example, which you may have if you're thirsty.
Yes, thank
Have some extra water, have some extra food. there's a power outage, to have a manual can opener, because you can't open cans if you have a electric can opener. Simple things, having the extra batteries, having your smoke alarms working, your carbon monoxide, as you said. Being careful with heaters. People have space heaters. Make sure it's a good quality one that isn't going to cause a fire, and never to have it within 3 feet of any clothing or any newspaper or other things, because you want to if you have a space heater, you need to be very, very careful with that space heater. Absolutely. Around children and with pets. So there's ways. So having the extra medication, like you said, having your doctor's phone numbers, having your important information, having somebody who you could call who can help you, someone who will check in with you. If somebody can possibly get some extra rock salt for their stairs before a storm, so that so they won't have an icy situation, because frequently when seniors fall and break a hip, it's a really serious condition, and we like to ask people to prepare for that, to prevent accidents such as falls. So there's so much we can do personally. Right. And there's so many resources that the city offers, and so I think it's a really good time now, before the storms hit, to really think it through and and ask questions and see what's available. Call the Mass Save, call CAPIC if you need it, and call City Hall if you have questions, and if there's anything that any of us can help, because there are so many people that know their stuff, who are willing to help, who know where to direct people for resources. So
absolutely, and generally speaking, around this time of year, we'll start to put up some tips on how to be safe, winter
Excellent.
safety tips. We'll put that on Revere TV, on our local access channel.
Great.
That will help our residents. I mean, Revere TV, I have to say, and it's a little plug for them, but
yeah, they're great.
But they do a terrific job in helping us keep our residents informed as well.
Yes, yeah, so, it's a valuable resource.
It absolutely is a valuable resource, and people should occasionally, look at that, look at their local access channel, and they'll be able to see that a lot of the public service announcements and a lot of the recommendations that the city may have, in order to keep people's families safe.
Right,
Yep.
right. So there's lots available. So,
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Well, thank you. Anything else that you'd like any other resources that you're thinking you'd like to share?
A lot of things. I think at the end of the day, a lot of things are, common sense. I think about a story I just heard the other day about a fire that was caused. Somebody came into their home, and they had a big, it was like a big box, and they put it on top of their electric stove. And they put it down, and unbeknownst to them, when they put the box down, it turned the
knob.
It turned the knob and lit the burner. They stepped out of the house and had to go somewhere. I guess it was a short trip. When they came back, their kitchen was on fire.
Oh my gosh.
So just, you can't use your stove as counter space.
Right.
You've got to be able to understand that presents a danger in and of itself. So,
yes.
A lot of things you just have to, what's the saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And
absolutely.
so, you really just have to make sure that that you're prepared. And again, if you're unsure about something, we're here.
Right, right.
And there's people like yourself that are there willing to help people, but they need to oftentimes take that first step.
That's right. So a lot of prevention is key.
Yeah.
And also, just before we close, I just want to remind people to get the flu shot.
Yes.
Because winter is a time when flu can proliferate, and to get a vaccine is really important. Go to your PCP, your doctor, or they have flu clinics around different towns. Free. I'm giving a free flu clinic tonight in Charlestown.
Okay.
So a lot of communities we have a lot of free vaccine that we're giving out, that we're distributing. You can go to CVS; they have them there. Your insurance usually will cover for
Yes.
that?
Absolutely. You can go to I mean, most pharmacies have them. I know Rite
Exactly.
Aid. When I go to Rite Aid,
Yep.
they have them there. I just got my flu shot yesterday. The city has
Excellent.
our city nurse, Carol Donovan,
Yes.
was very accommodating. She came over to my office, gave me my flu shot.
Wonderful.
It's quick and painless.
Yep.
But it helps certainly prevent the flu, and I think most doctors would agree that people, particularly as you start to get older, should absolutely get the flu shot.
Yes.
And you could answer this. I'm not 100%
Yeah.
sure, but we're starting to get to a point where you need to do it soon, right? I
Yes,
mean, by the end
right.
of the month, or
Yes, I would
by-
say as soon as possible, because it takes a week or two before your antibodies build up so that you are really protected from the flu. It takes a week or two. So if you get it now, and because as you get
And the
colder,
flu would normally hit when?
usually the end of November, December.
Yeah,
so it's time.
So we're running out of time.
We're running
here,
out of time.
So yeah, definitely. If
Please
you
get
haven't
your
got
flu
it,
shot.
get the flu shot. Definitely.
And along with that, to remember about coughing into your elbow is part of it. As respiratory etiquette, don't be coughing in people's faces. If people are coughing in your face, get away from the person who's coughing in your face.
Oh yeah, and I wash my hands 25 times a day.
Excellent.
I think it's important. People just got to be conscious and conscientious about washing their hands,
Yes.
because there's obviously there's a lot of different ways that you can become infected,
Right.
particularly during the flu season. So
Yes.
it's very important, I think, to keep your
Yeah,
hands
so there's
clean.
simple things.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, but if you can do those things, and also to have children, the children stay home from school if they're sick.
Yes.
Because then sometimes you walk into the school and you see children clearly are not feeling well, and they're spreading the germs. So to remind people to keep their children home if they're sick. And
Well, school nurses always earn their money, but
Yes,
they
they do.
particularly earn their money this time of year. So,
yes, they do.
Yeah.
Thank God for school nurses. Well, thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah, it
for
was
oh, you're wonderful.
it
And
was
we
a
are so
pleasure.
lucky to have such a wonderful mayor working for our city.
Thank
So
you, Pat. And I'm very blessed and fortunate to work with a lot of consummate professionals like yourself and others. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us again for this. This is our second show, and I hope you learned some good information. And please feel free to call City Hall and pursue the resources that we shared with you. I would love to really build a culture of preparedness and to really remember to help each other and to help your neighbor. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.